Welcome to Icons with your host, Rob Feeney. The show that visits with celebrities and corporate executives willing to share their stories and ideas to help you succeed in business. You're currently listening to Part 1. Meet today's icon.
Welcome to Icons. Let's dig in.
Welcome to Icons. I'm your host, Rob Feeney, and we've got a great show for you today. Our next guest is the chairman and CEO of Peavey Electronics. Please welcome Mr. Hartley Peavey. How are you, Hartley?
Great.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for joining us today. You know, what a huge privilege here. First of all, congratulations on 45 years in business. Quite the accomplishment.
It's been an interesting little sleigh ride.
I bet it has. What's, really kind of, let's just break that question down for a second. What was your inspiration for starting Peavey?
That's an interesting question. I get asked that quite a lot. Fortunately, I had the good fortune to grow up in a very interesting place at a very interesting time. The place was in Mississippi, and not many people realize that this thing that we call rock and roll essentially started on the banks of the Mississippi River from New Orleans up to maybe St. Louis and Memphis and Mississippi and Louisiana. Everybody knows about Elvis and B.B. King and Fats Domino and Ray Charles and all those kinds of folks, and they're all from the South. And a lot of people, especially younger people, are not aware that this thing that we call rock and roll didn't start in L.A. or New York. It started, maybe couple hundred miles on both sides, mostly to the east of the Mississippi River. And my dad was the local music dealer, and one of my jobs was carrying out the trash and buying records for his record department, as he so eloquently put it, to buy the kind of records that young people wanted to listen to, because my dad was a swing musician. He thought that rock and roll would never last. But I grew up in that time frame, and in 1957, I went to see Bo Diddley. And I kind of went nuts and went back and told my dad I wanted to play guitar. And he explained to me that I shouldn't do that because guitar players didn't pay their bills and so forth and so on, and therefore I shouldn't do it. But, of course, at that time in my young life, I wanted to be a rock star. So the long and short of it is he got me some guitar lessons. I asked him to give me a guitar, and he wouldn't. He said that he'd consider that when and if I ever learned how to play the guitar. And that caused me to build my own guitar, which was not so hot, but at least it worked. I wanted a pickup, and then he wouldn't give me a pickup, so I made my own. And then once I had a guitar and a pickup, naturally I built an amplifier, because the answer was the same. When you learn how to play, then I'll think about buying you one. And to my father, an amplifier was like, a 5-watt amp with an 8-inch speaker in it. So first big amp I built had 4 12-inch speakers in it, I think. And it was big like Bo Diddley's and didn't sound so good, but I kept working on it. But the interesting thing is I've been building amplifiers since 1957, which is probably a lot longer than most of the current crop of tube gurus have been alive.
And started in your basement, too, of all places. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I've always been a craftsman. I used to win science fairs and model airplane contests and all that kind of thing. And my teachers thought that I was a genius, but hell, you could look at my grades and see that wasn't so, but the reality was I was pretty good at building things. I've always been able to build things, model airplanes and speaker enclosures, guitars, amplifiers, and quite honestly, it came so easy for me, I thought everybody knew how to do it. All in high school, I took every shop course I could. I took machine shop and a sheet metal shop and wood shop, and I could make a chassis, or I could make a cabinet, or wire an amplifier. I mean, that was my talent. In fact, the way I got into building things full-time was after about 8 years, I finally got good enough to be in a few little bands, and every band I happened to be a part of, they needed gear, so I built it for them. But a strange thing started happening. When I finished all the gear that they needed, they would kick me out. And the third time that happened, I had to have a serious conversation with myself. And basically I said, well, it looks like you're not going to be a rock star, sport, so what you going to do with the rest of your life? And the answer came back, I'm maybe not the greatest guitar player, but I'm pretty good at building things. And every musician that I've ever been around, at least at that time, said, well, I wish somebody would build good gear at a fair price. And mind you, this is in the mid-'60s, and by then CBS had taken over Fender, and Norland had taken over Gibson, and a lot of the conglomerates came in and bought up all the music and sound companies. And within a couple of years, the prices doubled, the quality went way down, and I saw a golden opportunity to build things. And that was 45 years ago. And interestingly, virtually every company that I competed with back then is either gone out of business or has changed hands many times.
And here you are. You're still in business. Was it challenging to get started in the beginning there?
Oh, yeah. Nobody would believe me. Nobody would believe me. I started out building fairly simple guitar amplifiers because that's the only thing I knew how to do at that time. But over the years, we got into sound systems, and sound systems really have always been the biggest part of our business. And it's still that way. We sell sound systems not only for musical groups, but we have a number of divisions, and we just put the sound system in the Beijing airport for the Olympics a year or so ago, and every theme park on the planet, Disney's and Universal and Six Flags have all got Peavey sound systems. In the Myrtle Beach Hard Rock theme park, we put over 700 speakers, as well as one of our divisions, which is called Media Matrix. We put all that in, and not many people know that we do that. And I've had a lot of people say, well, we didn't know you did that. Why did you do that? And it's a fairly simple answer, is because we know how to. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people think that making guitar amplifiers is some kind of rocket science, but believe me, if a kid in the 9th grade could make one in 1957 that at least was decent, making a guitar amp is not a big trick. In fact, as if it were, there wouldn't be so many people doing it. But we've had, I think one of the things that sets Peavey apart is we've had 45 years under the same ownership and management to evolve and grow our technology and gain more experience. As a matter of fact, the only company that's been around longer than I have, in our end of the business anyway, the only company that's been around longer than I have under the same ownership and management is Marshall, and Jim Marshall started his company in 63, I think, and I started mine in 65. So Jim's been around a couple of years longer than me, but I'm right there with him.
That is the end of Part 1. Please join us for Part 2. We hope you enjoyed listening to Icons. Check out other segments and guest interviews. If you have ideas for future topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please call 763-412-0771. Icons is produced and recorded by Jason Medvec at Bat Cave Studios in St. Paul, Minnesota. For Rob Feeney, I'm Sunny Warner, and find me at sunnywarner.com. Thanks for listening to Icons.